Next, we're going to talk about sections 11A, 12A, 21 through 32, 35, 42, 41, and 42. These are sections of the bill that deal with higher education and workforce development. We're going to go ahead and get into testimony straight away. Our first witness today is Dr. Greg Little. Good morning, Dr. Little. I know that, if you will, let us know who you are and where you're from.
Certainly. My name is Greg Little. I'm the superintendent for Carolina.
And I know that I just happen to know that you are, and we're kind of on this issue of recruitment and retention. We've been working on that a lot. We're touching on that as part of what we've been working on today. I know that's kind of an area that you're feel strongly about. So if you would share that with us.
Yes, sir. I think probably one of my biggest concerns about the bill as it's presented is that it does not do enough for teacher recruitment and retention. I think the real teacher recruitment and retention is the essential issue that we have to solve here to move South Carolina schools forward. You know, no idea that we have will work without qualified teachers. We can have all the ideas we want, but unless we have a great teacher in the classroom, nothing else really matters. There is no more powerful impact than a great teacher in the classroom. And I've often been told, you know, as a superintendent, I get told by private industry all the time that we should run education like a business. That is one of the lines that I get most of. And what I would say is what great businesses do is they do what it takes to recruit the best and the brightest that they have, and then they work incredibly hard to create conditions that want people to stay, for people to stay in that profession and stay with their company. I've always considered teaching as a social contract. You know, no one gets into teaching to make it rich, but at the same time, I also think that the social contract is out of balance. We are asking young people to accrue thousands upon thousands and thousands of dollars worth of debt, and then we're asking them to come into a profession where they're making much less money than is commiserate with their level of education. And that social contract being out of balance is really what I think we're having an incredibly hard time with here in South Carolina. If you go into any honors classroom, and I would invite you to come to any honors classroom in Lexington 1, if you walk into an honors classroom and ask them who wants to be a teacher, you will be lucky to have one or two hands raised. Look at our schools of education here in South Carolina. Young people are not choosing the profession, and that is what I hope this bill ultimately does. I think it's a complicated situation, but I also think it's going to take a multi-pronged approach. So, for example, one of the things we have to do is really focus on the pipeline. Where are the kids from high school, and can we get them interested in becoming teachers? In South Carolina, you have the South Carolina Teaching Fellows Program, which is, I think, a wonderful opportunity to assist with tuition and provide our young people with an opportunity to as a way into the profession. In North Carolina, I attended school on a similar scholarship. I was a North Carolina Teaching Fellow. But we only have 200 kids impacted by this scholarship. One of the ways I think we can take a look at this is let's double it. Let's make it 400 kids. Let's go after and continue to aggressively recruit the best and the brightest that South Carolina high schools have to offer, because those are the kids we want to be interested in teaching. Those are the teachers that you want for your children and grandchildren. At the same time, continue to fully fund teacher cadet programs. We have to work really hard to recruit that class and to change the perception that teaching is not a desired profession. So I think that's one of the main areas we need to look at. I heard you talking about teacher salary just a second ago. One of the things that is probably my big concern about salary is that we don't currently have a vision for what we want salary to become. A step increase here or there is good, but I think what we want to do is really define and outline what our vision for salary is in South Carolina. Again, you know, if you take a CDL class, your commercial driver's license, it takes about 8 weeks to complete that class. those folks that come out of those classes will make more than many of our teachers with master's degrees. Now, I love our truck drivers, and I'm not trying to disparage them in any way, shape, or form. But we do have to ask ourselves, what do we value then when it comes to our teachers when those types of realities happen? And again, we talk about that social contract. We're burdening people with large amounts of debt, and then we're asking them to enter a profession where they're not making the money commensurate with their level of education. Another thing that I think we need to examine, too, is we need to improve the working conditions that teachers face. A small idea for that is we ask teachers to learn, we ask teachers to lead, we ask teachers to adapt, we ask teachers to differentiate for every student. And the truth of the matter is we offer them very little time to learn how to do that and to improve their skills when they're working through that and trying to do that. And so one of the things that I think we could also consider, even something small like increasing the contractual days of the school year, providing them opportunities to learn more, providing them opportunities to learn on our dime. We should be paying them for improvement and to be better in the classroom because that's our expectation of them. Additionally, I know the flexible start date will be talked about later this afternoon, but some flexibility in the school calendar would also allow us to build in breaks for our teachers and to allow some different opportunities and some different ways we could go about training that would provide job-embedded professional development, real-time professional development, and also provide the breaks that I think our teachers need. It's a long time between MLK Day all the way through spring break and what our teachers have to face and looking at our schools. I would also talk about the short term. We're talking about teacher recruitment and retention. Everything that I've talked about so far is about a long-term issue. Short term, we really need to make it easier for our retirees to come back to education. We have a ready-made workforce sitting in our backyards, in our communities, and we're not taking advantage of that for our schools as well. And I think we really need to look at that. More and more South Carolina school districts are outsourcing to international teachers. And while I do believe international teachers play a role, we certainly recruit quite a bit when we talk about Spanish and Chinese and some other those opportunities. But when we're talking about chemistry and we're talking about special education and we're talking about those kinds of areas, we have a workforce here locally. And it makes me uncomfortable that we are continuing to rely on international teachers to fill that need as well. The last thing that I would say, and certainly we don't have time today to get into it in depth, but I believe our accountability system has has some blame to bear here as well. An over-reliance on accountability sucks the joy out of teaching. People do not, and I hear some mumbles behind me. The truth of the matter is that these folks behind me did not get into educations because they dreamed of the day where their children could fill out bubble sheets. And because of that, we need, and I know that we're talking about removing some standardized testing in this bill, and I think that's a great start. But we really need to get some common sense behind this. We have been involved in high-stakes testing for over 25 years. And what's it gotten us? And I know I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to say we really need to think about our accountability system and this over-reliance on standardized testing that we've done when we can create an environment where teachers maximize their talents and cultivate their creativity. So again, I commend you for tackling this kind of work, and I so much appreciate the fact that in South Carolina, we are committed to doing what's best for kids.
Dr. Little, just a quick question, and I guess it's become, I'm just making a point a bit, but the term high-stakes accountability, I have asked people this because I keep hearing this term over and over again, and I realize that there are, scorecards and grades and things like that that are given to schools based on based on a number of factors. Quite frankly, It's not just a high-stakes test. It's based on progress. It's based on different things depending upon which grade and so forth. So that grade is, but certainly there are tests that lead into, that are counted in that process. But the part I have trouble with, I get the accountability, I understand that, but to say it's high stakes, because I haven't seen, there aren't teachers that are being fired on a wholesale basis based on these tests.
Sure.
Principals aren't being fired on a wholesale basis based on this test. superintendents want me to let go wholesale because of these tests. So I guess I question the high stakes characterization because I don't really see anybody suffering consequences, at least the adults suffering suffering consequences as a result of this testing. So is that really a fair characterization? Or I mean, it's more about ego. I get that. It hurts your feelings if your school's not, is not doing good, and your school's doing great, and and congratulations. I know you've got a terrific school, but if I get that it hurts, kind of hurts your feelings about it, and it's not something you're proud of. But from a standpoint of real consequences, like people are being sent home because Johnny didn't do good on the test, that's just not happening, is it?
Well, I would argue that when I talk about high-stakes testing, anytime you label a school and a community as unsatisfactory, there's high stakes associated with that. There are real economic development stakes associated with that. I would also argue that the idea, our current accountability model as it exists relies, especially at the K-8 level, relies almost solely on standardized tests. It's progress. They measure progress, but what's the progress on? It's progress on a standardized test. And so what that does for schools and what that does for teachers is it begins to focus your teaching solely around this standardized test. It oftentimes narrows the curriculum. It increases pressure on teachers each and every day about what they test or what they teach and how they teach it, because it has to be in this lockstep mode. And what happens is schools of poverty actually get more and more focused on the test and less focused on the other things. And here's the ultimate issue, Senator Henry, is that those tests do not teach the skills. And this is the rub about the whole thing, is when we talk about success in the 21st century, and we talk about who's going to be most likely to succeed in this future where skills are automated and they're outsourced, jobs are outsourced, and we're living in a brave new world, those standardized tests typically do not test the things that are going to be the very skills that our kids are going to need to be successful. And so when we continue to ramp up where you go standardized test, standardized test, standardized test, and then at the same time go, well, but when we think about what kids are going to need in the future, that's not really, the profile of the South Carolina graduate does that really well,
right? But
that's not what our accountability system measures. It measures standardized testing, especially K through 8.
So you're I'm with you though. I'm hanging there with you.
Sure.
So you're really saying that the test is not in alignment with what is needing to be taught.
Correct, and it's not in alignment with what our values are as a society. If you talk to survey after survey about parents, talk about the reliance on these tests as a negative thing. Do you realize that we have procedures in place for what happens when a child throws up during a standardized test? And that is because our children are so stressed out about this that that's what happens. We will have children this May throwing up because they're so worked up about this test and how stressed out they are about this. Third graders.
Now, who got them stressed out about it?
Well, here's what happens. So it all flows downhill. So when we create these accountability systems, it puts pressure in district leadership, it puts pressure on school leadership, and that puts pressure on teacher leadership. And so we can't on one hand say we don't want to take these things seriously, when on another hand we're talking about a school report card that says your community and your school's unsatisfactory.
Well, it doesn't say your community's unsatisfactory. It says your school's unsatisfactory.
If your school is a member of your community, that labels.
Well, there are lots of members of the community that are unsatisfactory. I mean, I think that's stretching the point a bit. I mean, I get it.
But when schools play
that the school doesn't want to be. It doesn't. Well, I mean, I understand it. I appreciate they don't want to get a bad grade or be seen as underperforming. But the truth of it is, wouldn't you agree with me that the schools that are struggling, by and large, have been struggling for a very long time? They're not. It didn't just happen on last Tuesday. I mean, it's been happening over a course of years, and people in the community know that their school is struggling. It's not a mystery. I mean, I know which ones in South Carolina are, just as you do. And it's just a question of you're hiding it. We can either not tell people, try to hide it by not publishing it and just being it by word of mouth, or to at least say it out loud and speak the truth and hopefully make some change.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of hiding it. So I would say if you know who they are and I know who they are, because again, by and large, what standardized tests do is they measure, it's a measure of poverty. So any community that is more impoverished, traditionally on standardized tests, don't do as well, and that's a fact across, that's the truth of standardized testing. What I wish we would put our time and attention to is how can we better support those schools who are struggling and those communities who are struggling. Again, schools play such a major factor in economic development. It drives economic development in our community and many other communities, because when people are interested to come into a community, one of the first questions they want to know about, they certainly want to know about water and sewer and access and all those things. There's no doubt about that. But then they also want to know about the quality of schools, because those families that they're bringing to the community will ultimately have to live in that community. And that drives the quality of life within our community. So that's really my it's not about hiding those folks. And I want to be clear about something. I believe in accountability. Okay? I believe public schools, if you ask any public school teacher behind me, principals or whatever, we yearn for accountability. We want to talk to the public about the great work that's taking place in South Carolina schools, because there's a lot of it. There's a ton to be proud of. I mean, I've been blown away. I've been a South Carolinian now for 3 years. I wasn't born here, but I got here as quickly as I could. And I have been blown away by the quality and level of schooling that's taking place here in South Carolina. We have a lot to be proud of. What I'm talking about, I don't say we and bring other people with me, is a more common sense approach to accountability. I have a third grader. I guess this is another reason why it's important to me. Naomi's in the third grade. And Naomi is a great, great kid. She loves softball. She loves to play the violin. She loves basketball because her daddy's a Tar Heel fan. And so we put her in front of that TV all the time and let her watch the Tar Heels. And I think about the number of standardized tests that she is just getting ready to embark upon. And as her daddy, forget being superintendent, but as her daddy, that scares me to death. Because it will be dozens upon dozens of standardized tests that she's going to take over the next 9 years. And that's really something that I think, is that really the system that we want? It's definitely not the system that our parents want. It's definitely not the system that our educators want. I don't even think you want this system. I think we can do better, and I think we can use more common sense, but we have to think. You know, I had an old boss that used to talk about CS&L, a little common sense and logic. I think we need to apply some more common sense and logic to our accountability system, and that would help us when we talk about teacher recruitment and retention. I believe that would really help us as we move forward.
Senator Matthews.
Let me ask you a question. I kind of agree with your concept. I've always believed that schools are mirrors of the community. Whatever problem you find in the community, you find it at school. I had a long conversation with our current governor about investing in rural communities around schools. He graciously agreed to put in his budget a significant amount of money to look at investing in that community. Because if you don't fix the community, it's hard to fix the school.
You're right. Absolutely.
I mean, because they're one and the same. And so part of the education process, if you got 4 schools underperforming, you got a community underperforming. So you got to provide job opportunities. So you got to look at it kind of holistic rather than in isolation, because you'll never get there just trying to improve the school without improving the community.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I absolutely think investing in the communities of our rural communities. And again, I want to say I may live in Lexington one now, but I wasn't born there. I've worked in rural communities in North Carolina. I worked in Roanoke Rapids, which is right off the I-95 corridor, in Halifax County, which is the poorest county in North Carolina. It takes more. I mean, it really is a multi-pronged investment in that community. I think, for example, some of the things in your bill about providing mileage, I think that's a good step. I like the idea of providing tuition for the children of the teachers. That keeps them in the, I think that's another good step. I think all of those, any opportunities that you can do to attract teachers to those rural communities is going to be absolutely essential. And I think that's how you close the gap. Again, I don't believe it's about pay. I think it's about the environment, although pay's part of it. I don't want to walk away from pay because if I have to walk back and sit down with all these teachers. So I don't want to walk away from pay as an issue. But I do want to say those types of incentives about your children going to college for free if you work in this rural community, or we'll provide mileage, those types of things. I mean, I think those are things that start getting you there, but I also think you have to invest in the infrastructure of those communities as well. Would you want to live there? And that's a tough question that we have to ask ourselves sometimes too.
My final question would be, could you just send to me, to this committee, 5 things or 10 things that you would do to attract and retain teachers in the rural community? Number 1. And number 2, how do we, minority teachers are falling off the cliff. And minority enrollment in public schools are going up. How do we address that, and what some of the things we can do with it?
Well,
you can put it in writing. 5
Sure.
things to attract and retain teachers in poor communities. And secondly, what we can do to increase the number of minority teachers in schools.
All right.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Chairman.
Doctor, we have a habit on this subcommittee that has developed where we assign homework projects to our witnesses. So anybody else who signed up, just you're fair warned. No, but it really has, because we truly, the bottom line is we just don't run out of time, and we don't have to, because that was going to be my question too, suggestions on recruiting teachers into the rural communities, and maybe looking at homegrown teachers as a strategy, and your ideas about that. But I'm going to,
Absolutely.
if you could just jot a couple of those down and email it or get it back to us, that would be a great help, and I'll share it with the committee. Senator Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question, you mentioned about, kids when they take tests under stress and everything. A lot of that stress is coming from parents. Man, parents are putting on their kids to perform well, for scholarships. I'm a former teacher, retired middle school administrator, and I know a lot of stress is coming from kids. Stress parents are putting on their kids to perform well. And when we think about rural communities and everything, key thing is we know that's so important, the resources in the home. I don't care where you are, the resources that you have in the home is a big factor determining how well a kid is going to perform. And like I say, it's just not the schools, because a lot of times in the community, those 7.5 hours a kid be at school are the best hours of the day.
That's right.
So you got to have the other resources in the home to support what's happening in the schools. And that's when you have good performing schools, when you have parental support, resources in the home to help that kid and everything. And I'm just like, think about our rural communities. I'm interested in the ideas you have that would help us recruit teachers to the rural community. And I think another important fact is if you have a teacher that stays in that community, the kids see that teacher out in the community. Instead of, I know we don't pay mileage for them to come in. Yeah, at the end of the day, they going home. They going back to their community where they have a social life and everything. So it's so many factors involved in trying to get teachers into our rural communities. And we need to look at not just the educational part of it, socialization and economic impact, recruit jobs there where we could have individuals live there. You have good jobs to support the community. So I'm interested in your ideas and your topics. Thank you,
sir.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time today.
Our next witness is Kathy Manners.